Listen to part of a talk in a physical science class.
For the next week or so, we're going to be looking at so-called environmentally friendly technology, a technology that pollutes less, does less harm, even no harm if it's possible, to the environment. An obvious place to start might be with the biggest polluters, industrial processes, or automobiles. But instead, I'm going to start with the microcosm, with something small that I think each one of us has in our homes to one degree or another. I'm going to start with the personal, with our own lives. Devices with standby power. What is standby power? Also called standby mode. It's a feature offered by many appliances and electronic devices today. We turn the television off, but it's not really off, or not completely off. It's in standby mode, so that we can pick up the remote control and switch it back on whenever we want. Well, to read that remote control, some part of the TV's electronics has still got to be on, always looking for that remote signal, standing by to receive that message and turn itself on. Think of all the devices you've got in your home that have some kind of standby mode. Televisions, DVD players, stereos, computers. Do you have a coffee maker or a microwave oven with a built-in digital clock? That's consuming electricity, even when you're not making a fresh cup of coffee or reheating your morning coffee.
Yeah, but big deal. They couldn't possibly be using much energy.
Would you be surprised if I told you that a typical microwave oven uses more electricity powering that clock than it uses heating food?
Yeah, come on. It's got to take a lot more power to heat food than run a digital clock.
Sure, at any given moment. If you're heating food in the microwave, it actually takes 100 times as much power to heat the food as to run the clock. But most of the time, your microwave isn't heating food. In fact, most microwaves are on standby for more than 99% of the time.
But does it really add up to much?
There was a study done almost 10 years ago that suggested that 5% of all household electrical use, 5% was consumed by devices in standby mode. But a team of scientists from the Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory, I mention their employer just to give you a sense of how reputable these scientists are. They researched the actual standby power use. And in fact, they found the actual use approached 10% of electricity consumption by households. And a French study in the same year, 2000, reported that the figure in France was 7%. There have been other studies in other developed countries, and some have even found standby power consumption in residences to be as high as 13%.
You're right then. That could be a significant savings.
Who's going to give up the convenience?
Well, there are ways to make standby power consumption more efficient. Some electronic devices use more than 20 watts of power in standby mode, and yet the technology exists to enable standby modes to consume around 1 watt of power, even less. The problem, of course, is persuading manufacturers to install them.
The government should make it mandatory that they use more efficient standby modes.
Why jump to such an extreme solution? What about that Energy Star program? You know, when you buy something that uses electricity, a refrigerator, a television, a computer. Some of them have that Energy Star logo on them. It means the product complies with standards for energy efficiency. I think it's international, not just the US. They could create some standards for the standby mode feature.
Yeah, but it's voluntary, right? Industry won't change unless it's forced to.
If the environment is so important to consumers, then they'll buy items that are more energy efficient. The market will take care of it.
Come on, until today's class, I never knew about the problem. When the government sees a problem like this that they can easily handle with a regulation, they should do it.
Government laying down these kinds of laws just gets in the way of industry doing what it does best, which is innovation. And also it means consumers lose some freedom. We don't have as much choice.
Well, California introduced some legislation in 2004 that sets standards for energy consumption of standby modes. Already, it's illegal to sell a television or DVD player in California that uses more than 3 watts of power in standby mode. One of the Berkeley scientists has declared that if these household gadgets use the most efficient means of powering their standby modes, that the developed nations could reduce carbon dioxide emissions by nearly 0.5%. That's the equivalent of removing more than 18 million cars from the roads.
Or you could just unplug your appliances when you're not using them.
Now get ready to answer the questions. You may use your notes to help you answer. Number 13. What is the talk mostly about? Number 14. Why does the professor start by discussing the microcosm instead of discussing large industrial polluters? Number 15. Which statement best describes the Energy Star program? Number 16. Which statement best describes the attitudes of the two students? Listen again to part of the talk, then answer the question.
Yeah, but big deal. They couldn't possibly be using much energy.
Would you be surprised if I told you that a typical microwave oven uses more electricity powering that clock than it uses heating food?
Number 17. Why does the professor ask the student this?
Would you be surprised if I told you that a typical microwave oven uses more electricity powering that clock than it uses heating food?
Listen again to part of the talk, then answer the question.
But a team of scientists from the Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory. I mentioned their employer just to give you a sense of how reputable these scientists are. They researched the actual standby power use.
Number 18. What does the professor imply about Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory?